Right, we're all there now then. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 7 waiting so far. I'm just wanting to make sure we can get all our councillors in. You know, I can see us being really busy tonight.
Right, okay.
You just don't know, but I suspect it might be. Hello, Linda. Good evening to you. Hi, Jeff. Good evening. Can you hear okay? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Richard, can you hear okay? Hi, Adrian.
Hello. Nick's going to come and listen to this meeting, but I'll have to put him on another computer. So I'm going to do that in a minute and then change the name. Otherwise, you'll have 2 of me, which would just be far more than anybody could imagine. So if I disappear for a minute, I am here and I will be back.
Excellent. Thank you. Can you hear okay, Linda?
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to say hello to Steve. Thanks.
Hi, Linda. How are you doing?
Not bad, you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Good.
Good.
Are we expecting many members of the public?
Yeah, I think we'll get a few. There's a few about to come in now. So we'll let them come in.
Ah,
I'm there.
oh God. It's wondering why I couldn't change his name. David, can you change Nick's name? I can't do it. Can you change Nick's? Oh, there we are.
Already
I'm
done
going to
it.
go in the other room.
Steve, do you want to?
Need some pencils out there.
So Linda and Steve, Pat will be with us in a minute, and it's coming up to 6 o'clock.
Can I just ask that everyone stays on mute while Steve does his presentation? We've got Steve Wilson from Wiltshire Council, who is a major projects highways engineer. The presentation, part of it was given to the area board. If people have questions, we can take them at the end. If they can't be answered straightforwardly, what we're happy to do is take the questions away, and Steve and I will work together to produce an answer to those questions and publicise it so everyone can see. So as soon as Pat gets on, we'll get started.
Yeah, she can't find the codes. I'm having to send them to her, so I'm really sorry.
David, I've had trouble connecting this evening. Can you confirm if I'm actually on? You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Thanks.
David, it's Richard Wiltshire. I can't seem to get my video working. It has worked, but it seems to have gone off. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely fine. Thank you very much, Richard. No problem.
Sorry, David, since I've sent Pat the codes, I've now only got you. Ah, it's all right, you've all come back again. Oh, hopefully she won't be long.
That's great. Thanks, Adrian.
David, is Pat in the waiting room yet?
Should just come in now.
Oh, all right, okay. I was going to say, if not, we need to get started because we've got another meeting to follow this.
Right, Pat should be here somewhere.
Hello everyone, sorry I'm late.
That's great, Pat. Your audio's fine. I think we're
Thank
ready
you.
to go whenever you are.
Right, are we ready to go? Sorry I'm late everyone. Is Steve here?
I
Yes,
am indeed,
yeah.
Pat, yes.
I can't see you on my screen, but anyway, welcome Steve. Thank you very much for coming tonight. And I think that's all will we have some time for questions from the public later? Oh, I can see you, Steve. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Hopefully good. Okay, so without more ado, I'll hand over to Steve to tell us all about the how the bypass is going to be determined.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, I'm going to try and share my screen if I may. David, could you give me a quick nod if that has popped up, please?
Yeah, that's fine, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Yes, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Chair. Most of you, or some of you, will know who I am. I'm Steve Wilson. I work for Wiltshire Council and specifically the Major Highway Projects team. I've got a few slides this evening in connection with the Melksham area bypass, beg your pardon, the Melksham bypass. For those of you who will have attended the Melksham area board a fortnight or so back, I do apologise. You're going to see an awful lot of the same slides, I'm afraid. There's nothing particularly new I can advise people, but I'm very happy to go through the same sort of information that was presented a couple of weeks ago. I've also included a few slides from the consultation material itself, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to just explain a little bit about how some of those slides work as well. So without further ado, and just to say, Chair, I'm very happy to take questions at the end, absolutely no problem at all. What I did speak to Linda about this morning was that if for any reason questions can't be fully answered this evening, I'm very happy for a series of written questions to be collated and submitted through the parish council, and then clearly myself and the team, we can formally reply to those through the parish council, again, the town council.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm sure most people will be aware of the A350. It's important to Wiltshire overall, and the connectivity it provides from the north of the county through to the south and then down on into the south coast. It is one of, if not the busiest route within Wiltshire Council's portfolio of highways. If you look at the plan on the right-hand side, the M4, the A303 and the A36 are all bigger routes and busier routes than the A350, but all of those actually form part of what's called the strategic road network. They are controlled, managed and maintained by Highways England as opposed to Wiltshire Council. The biggest route that Wiltshire Council actually has is the A350, and accordingly it's a key priority for Wiltshire in terms of connectivity of people, movement of goods, and it's clearly very important to the collection of settlements within northwest Wiltshire, Warminster, Westbury, Trowbridge, Melksham, Chippenham and the like. The route does suffer high volumes of traffic, it suffers congestion, it suffers delays, and for a long time Wiltshire Council has held it as a priority and has been wanting to improve it. There's been a series of works that have come past Chippenham and elsewhere along the route to enhance it as in terms of connectivity. And earlier this year, we were granted funding from the DFT to prepare what's called the outline business case for a bypass scheme. Oops. I think this is a very important slide because this sets into sort of context where we are on the process of moving towards the construction of a potential bypass project. I see this slide really as a series of stepping stones. The top two in the left-hand side, the top two grey ones here, we've finished those. We've identified the need for the scheme. We've done what's called a strategic outline business case, and that proves and shows that there is economic benefit in pursuing an improvement to the A350 around Melksham. We've now got to this stage, which is where we are reviewing where we are, confirming the initial assessment, looking at what we call the long list of options, before moving down to a short list of options where we would do further detailed assessment, and then on to a single preferred option upon which we would submit what's called the outline business case. Those 4 steps there really is what we've got funding for at the current stage, and we're hoping to get through those 4 steps really over the next 12 months or so. If we get to submit the outline business case, and if the scheme still stacks up in economic terms and it is still a valid proposition, we would then proceed through to a planning application, which would involve all of the various environmental impact assessments and consultations and various other studies, visual impact assessments and the like. We would have to, it's a horrible term, but we would have to do something called land assembly. We would actually have to gain control or consent of landowners in order for us to actually build the scheme. So we think we will probably try to do that through agreement with landowners, but inevitably on a scheme of this size, I rather suspect we will end up in a compulsory purchase situation of some description. There would be a side road order to also sit alongside that. So this would be, how would a bypass affect the existing roads that are intersected by the new bypass, or the public rights of way, or the bridle ways and walkways and the like, and how might they need to be amended because the bypass comes forward. All of those elements, the compulsory purchase and the side road orders, I would be fairly certain we're going to end up at public inquiry on this. It says possible public inquiry. I would badge it as a probable public inquiry for this scheme, for a scheme of this size. We then get on to tendering for the works. It's only once we've tendered for the works and engaged with the contractor that we actually know how much the scheme is going to cost. Up until that point, everything is done upon estimates and from experience and knowledge and the assessments that we do. Once we get the actual cost, the build cost, we can then do what's called the full business case. So we have strategic outline business case, and then full business case before we then proceed to construction. We are at the very early stages of this project. I think that this is going to take, these 12 stepping stones or however many there are probably going to take us in the order of 5 or 6 years to get through. And that's on the basis that we are able to get across each hurdle when we approach and have to navigate that particular hurdle. The red box, the third box, is where we are in terms of the consultation. So red equals public engagement. This is what we're doing at the moment. But as shown by the dotted red lines on various other boxes or various other stepping stones, there will be other opportunities for stakeholders and the public to become engaged and to help shape this scheme. The A350, as I mentioned, it does suffer from traffic congestion and delays. It provides that sort of direct north-south connectivity through the area, but it also provides a lot of other functions. It actually serves part of the east-west connectivity through Melksham itself. If you're travelling on the A365 from one side of the town to the other, you're actually directed and need to negotiate Western Way and Farmers Roundabout. So the A350, as well as being a north-south route, it is an east-west route. There are local safety concerns. We have various accident cluster sites along the route. The route itself does sever the town. It severs the railway station from the town and various other facilities. Noise and air is obviously a concern, and quality issues surrounding that are clearly very high up in our thoughts. And if we think about the future traffic growth, the route itself probably is under pressure anyway. We know that. There are delays, there are disruptions. But if we were to do nothing, looking forward, the image on the right-hand side really tries to depict what the future may hold. So if we do nothing, anything with a thick green line really is a link on the highway network which is coming under the most pressure. Thin green lines coming under less pressure. Actually, we're forecasting there could be some reduction on some routes, but that really is an image which hopefully puts into context. If we were to do nothing, how bad could things get? And specifically, that depiction there is the AM peak period, looking at the difference between the 2018 situation and the forecast plan period, which is 2036. I've included this slide, which is actually an extract from the consultation material, really to try and explain where we are and how we are going through the forthcoming various steps. We're at the long list stage at the moment. We've got a lot of options open to us, and we are trying to sift those down into what we would call a shortlisted options. And again, once we get to there, we can then look at things in more and more detail before we get to a preferred option. As we go on this journey from long list to short list to preferred options, we then have to effectively increase the level of analysis and detail as we go. I've used an analogy before about this process. It's almost like thinking about if you were looking to buy a house, and to start with, you think, whereabouts do I want to live? And you're looking at things in very general terms. Having determined that, you then approach the local estate agents and you will receive the particulars for lots and lots of properties. You will sift those, put one pile of we like that, another pile of maybe don't like that so much. And then as you go in, you then visit those sites, visit those properties, look at things in more detail, do your further research. And it's only once you've investigated things absolutely and as fully as you can, and you understand everything about that property, that you actually then plump and say, okay, that's my preferred choice. I want to buy that house. In many respects, that analogy is almost the journey that we are on at the moment, moving from long list to short list and then to preferred options. I've included this slide again from the consultation material. I think it's a very useful depiction of the physical constraints around Melksham. So the graphic to the right is showing lots and lots of different things, but it's an attempt to try and highlight up the difficulty that any particular route may have, the sort of hurdles that it would need to get across, the physical issues that would need to be negotiated. The A350 is the yellow line coming broadly down the middle and then to the south. We've got the railway line, which is the dotted black line to the west of the town with the railway station. We have a substation, electric substation to the west of Beanacre. And the blue lines that are radiating from that red triangle are actually the overhead power lines, the pylons and the overhead power lines. Now, these are a constraint, not in terms of just of proximity, how close we can go to the pylons themselves, but they also represent a constraint, a height constraint. If we try and build a bridge over the railway, how do we then try and get under the overhead power lines? And the proximity of the lines is something that we very much need to think of. The light blue areas are the floodplains. So we have the River Avon snaking its way through Melksham, northeast to southwest. We have Semmington Brook, which is in the south part of the area of interest. But we also have various other tributaries and brooks which feed into the River Avon in various locations. Floodplain inevitably is a constraint that we need to be thinking very carefully about. As I'm sure most people will be aware, developing within a floodplain really is a very difficult thing to actually see bring forward. We have the Kennington Avon Canal to the south, east-west. we have the disused line of the Wilts and Berkshire Canal, which moves up through the area, and which there is a core policy actually protecting the route of that. The little blue dots that you see are listed buildings. We've not indicated every listed building. There clearly will be some within the middle of Melksham, but the listed buildings give an indication of their location and where more of them are rather than less of them. And this graphic really just gives a flavour of how difficult it will be to find a route through the area which avoids all of these various different constraints. And I think that by inspection of that plan, fundamentally, there's a lot happening here to the west of the route, or to the west of the town. There is less happening, therefore less constraints, and that would equate to a more deliverable opportunities to the east. So the routes, we've got an awful lot of options available within our long list of options. I think there's 18 different references here. Options 1 to 6 were all about not building a new bypass. There are options about can we introduce some form of demand management, workplace parking levies or road user pricing, restricting HGVs, those sort of interventions. Would that deliver against the priorities that the council has for the A350? And there are walking, cycling improvements and public transport improvements as well as various different options. Now, 1 to 6, when we did the strategic outline business case study, these didn't perform particularly well in their own right. But there's nothing to say that some of these couldn't come forward as sitting alongside potential road improvements or the building of a bypass. Certainly in the case of walking and cycling, I can see a strong case that if we build a bypass and take traffic off the existing A350, in many respects, you generate traffic, you generate road capacity, which might be used for other modes. So I could see a case for enhancing walking and cycling and public transport, certainly along the A350, the existing A350 corridor as it is at the moment. Moving on to the road options, the 7s, so these are the red and the maroon options. These are thoughts to enhance the existing alignment of the A350. We obviously delivered the Farmers Roundabout scheme. It opened about this time last year. Can we improve the A350 further? Is there scope for us to do further dualling or further enhancements? And yes, there is the short answer. And yes, that would enhance the north-south connectivity along the A350. However, it wouldn't necessarily address some of those more local issues, the severance effect, the connectivity east-west, some of those more local issues to Melksham itself. So it could be a good strategic solution, but it may not be a good local solution. Options 8 and 9, these are the ones to the west of the town. And as I showed on the constraints plan just a few moments ago, whilst a lot of these have got good merit, they do have questions over deliverability because of the various constraints that are there. Nevertheless, they are valid options, and we are inviting thoughts and comments as to whether people believe that these are issues that we should be taking further. At the SOBC, at the strategic outline business case stage, the options to the east of the town actually performed better, and they were seen as being the emerging best performing options. We're nowhere near a preferred option at this stage. We need to reassess, revisit, and work up further the options in more detail. 10A, 10B, and 10C have been shown many times before at various presentations. 10D is a new route which came about following the Melksham Area Board in March. where we were asked to explore whether there is any merit in actually diverting a route to go to the south of the Kennet-Avon Canal and connect with the A361. Now, if I go back to my analogy of looking for a house, this is almost like the situation where you decided which properties you're actually going to make a visit to, and then the estate agent phones you up and says, "Oh, Mr. Wilson, you might want to think about this new property that's come to the market." And when you look at the particulars of that new property, you think, yeah, I might want to have a look at that property. That's really where we are with 10D. We need to explore it, and it needs to be considered alongside the other routes. There may, through this consultation, be other ideas that emerge and come forward. And if they are, and if we consider that they have merit, we would be duty bound to consider those as well. I would draw your attention to the note. Although these are shown as individual lines on this plan, please, 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 we are dealing with corridors at the moment. We are not dealing with detailed routes. As an example, and just to help explain that, if you look to the top here, where the various 10s all have to cross the River Avon, we're showing possibly 3 different crossing points at that location of the River Avon. We don't know at this stage which the preferred crossing position would be, and we are in discussions with the Environment Agency to explore that and indeed other matters. It may be that the top crossing is seen as the preferred river crossing position, in which case 10A might not tie into the A350 here. It may actually divert over and cross somewhere akin to what is shown at the moment as 10C, and indeed vice versa. So please consider these lines as corridors, not specific routes. We've got the consultation, which is live at the moment. It was launched after the area board, or at the area board on the 4th of November. I think the website actually went live. The link to the website is here. There is an awful lot of information on there, and we would encourage people to access that and to find out more about the scheme, to provide comments and thoughts and suggestions through the online questionnaire. There is a series of FAQs on the website. I think at last count we were over 60. And as we are receiving comments through the consultation period, if we are picking up that there is a question which is being asked several times, we're taking the opportunity to actually post that as an FAQ on the website to help subsequent respondents in their understanding. It says here, please give your views by the 30th of November. I would look out for a press release tomorrow. There is, as I understand it, the consultation period is being extended. We've had various requests that, given the current COVID lockdown situation, that it would be prudent and a good idea for us to extend the consultation period. And I am fairly certain there's a press release to be delivered tomorrow, which will see that being extended through until the middle of January. This again is a slide that or an extract that I brought from the consultation material, and people obviously can log on and look at this in as much or as little detail as they choose. This is our intention or our thought as to try and show how we think the various different options are emerging and stacking up against the various objectives that we've got for the scheme. So just to talk you through this matrix, down the left-hand side here, we have the various different route options, and we have a brief description of what those options actually entail. Across the top, we have our 5 key objectives for the scheme, which have been adopted and have been clearly set out within the consultation material. In short, those options are, those objectives are, first and foremost, number 1 is to improve the north-south connectivity along the A350. The second priority and objective is to, it isn't a priority, it's an equal priority. The second objective is to enhance east-west connectivity across Melksham. The third objective is to provide opportunities for walking and cycling enhancements. The fourth objective deals with safety, and clearly if we're building a new road, one of our clear drivers is that we want to be building something that improves the safety of all road users. So enhancing safety is an objective. And then the fifth objective is to reduce the severance effect that the A350 has within Melksham. So we've actually got one strategic objective and four more local objectives. We have a red to green sort of RAG assessment effectively, or rating. And each one of these objectives and each one of these different schemes, based on the works that we've done thus far, this is how things appear to be evolving. Not to say that this will be the final position. Clearly, there is a lot more work to do. We are only just looking at those house particulars. We haven't made visits. We haven't got the surveyors in yet. We haven't done the investigations. But this gives a flavour for how things are actually sort of pointing at the moment. Red fundamentally doesn't deliver against our objectives. Green is performing better. The interesting thing for me is this column here. With the best will in the world, we could devise a scheme which is perfect against each one of our objectives. But if we cannot deliver that scheme, if it is beyond the realms of what is physically achievable, we do not have a project. So as well as the objectives of the scheme, we need to consider its deliverability. So is it fundamentally acceptable? Is it affordable? Can we actually get there and build it? Or is there a restraint, a restriction, which actually is a hurdle that we cannot overcome? So we've got a RAG assessment here as well for the deliverability of these various different routes. And we need to consider this in the round. Say there's further information within the consultation packs themselves. Again, here I've extracted a sheet from one of the information packs. It's always very difficult when we go to consultation to try and pitch the information at an appropriate level for people to understand and for them to engage with us. We have a variety of different sort of types of people who will want to engage. Some people may not want to engage. Some people will want to express a view and say to us, don't build a road, or do build a road, or I particularly like this route. Other people may want to go into a lot more detail on it and might want to consider things in the round and understand more of the detail. So what we've tried to produce here is a series of plans, and this is just one example. This happens to be option 8A, to depict the key particulars, if you like, for that road or that route. We are providing a description of the route. We are providing the constraints plan, and then shaded in yellow is the corridor for that route. We are providing information on the key aspects of it, its length, how many junctions, would it cross the river, would it cross the railway, some sort of key engineering criteria, if you like. We have a narrative which explains the pros and cons of that particular option relative to others as we are seeing it and based upon the investigations thus far. We give an overall value for money, low, medium, high, and where we think it would sit. And again, that's based upon the investigations we've done to date. And then down the right-hand side, we've again included a RAG assessment, or a granulated RAG assessment against various criteria, which in turn speak to the business case. We have to produce a business case which deals with the strategic, economic, environmental, social, financial, management, all these various different aspects of building a scheme. We have to develop a business case. And each one of these assessment criteria actually feed in to those elements of the business case. And we think that by producing a single route on a page, or road option on a page, if you like, as we've called it, we're actually getting that information across in what we think is an appropriate manner for people to engage with us at this early stage of the project. There are costing information provided here. It's all banded. It's all very indicative. Please note it's construction costs that are indicated, not total scheme costs. As many people will know, if you want to build an engineering project, there is how much you pay the contractor to build it, but there are an awful lot of other costs which come alongside that: the design, the site management, the risks and the contingency pots, the public inquiry fees, the purchase of the land. There are a whole host of other costs above and beyond the build cost, which actually you need, certainly at this very early stage of a scheme, we need to be bearing those in mind. So you'll not see any scheme costs. We think that the headline scheme cost will be 135 million, depending upon the route chosen. But what we've tried to do here is we've tried to give a indication of construction costs for each of these. So what happens next? We have our ongoing technical investigation works, which is obviously a work in progress, and that's going to be going through for the next year and beyond. We are actually starting some on-site walkover surveys. Atkins have got some surveyors who are trying to access ponds and rivers and streams and things of that nature to actually understand the environment, as well as flora and fauna. They're also looking at maybe what would the visual impact of road locations be. And that would be something we would need to consider when we get further down the line to the planning application process. But those technical works investigations are ongoing at the moment and will continue certainly for the next year or so. We've launched the consultation at the area board a couple of weeks back. As I say, look out for the press release tomorrow. I think this should probably now read mid-January 2021. Please wait for that to be confirmed tomorrow. All suggestions, comments will be welcomed. We are going through that sifting process to go from the long list to the short list. We anticipate coming back for consultation mid-2021. If I just zoom back to that early stepping stone slides, that's when we would be at this stage, moving from our shortlist, consulting and moving to the preferred route options. And where was I? There we are. And we believe that by this time next year, October 2021, we will have concluded the preferred route that will be adopted by Wiltshire Council. And we will then be able to submit that outline business case. These are the key details in terms of how to give us views through the consultation. We have the website with all of the various information packs on, access to the questionnaire, access to the FAQs. We are accepting emails via the generic email address, which is manned by myself and other colleagues in the team. And if people send us emails or letters via email, we are adding those to the consultation responses. Or indeed, if people wish to write to us, clearly we're accepting letters, bearing in mind the lockdown period that we are in at the moment. There's some difficulties in terms of picking those up and responding to those on a timely manner. So we would prefer, if possible, the questionnaire. If not, then via email. But that route is open to people, and any letters received in response to this consultation will be added to the body of evidence. Thank you, Chair. That's really all I wanted to say. I'm sure there isn't a huge amount which is new in any of that, because a lot of that was covered at the area board and is obviously on the consultation website as well. But I hope that for people who weren't at the area board, who haven't had a look yet, that's given everybody a flavour for where we are, what we're doing, and indeed where we're going.
Thank you very much, Steve. As usual, lovely, thorough explanation. I don't see anybody in the chat with a question, and if you have one, you need to put your hand up. I can see Tom and Mandy Pierce. Would you like to speak? You have to unmute. And if anybody else wants to ask a question, if you stick your hand up, I'll start making a list.
Right. Could I ask a question of Steve, please? Thank you very much, Steve, for giving us a very thorough explanation. Could you please run through comparisons of the routes 10C and 10D from where they separate? Because it appears that they both are presented as favourable comparisons in the details that have been provided and score similarly. 10D is significantly different. It has a canal, a brook, a floodplain, wildlife, and great environmental impact. Bridges would need to be built, stilts would probably need to be constructed, and yet they are both compared very favourably on the website as being virtually the same.
Okay, Chair, thank you for that question. Yes, 10D and 10C digress towards the southern end of the eastern bypass route. However, we can't just look at the small parts of difference between 10C and 10D. They need to be considered as whole routes. So 10D, 3/4 of the route would be exactly the same as 10C. The difference, as you quite rightly allude to, as 10D swings to the south, it would need to cross the Kennet and Avon Canal, which in itself would be a cost implication. It would then have to cross the Semmington Brook and the floodplain there. Again, there would be cost and environmental implications there. And it would then drop down onto the A361. There may be improvements to the A361 itself in the run up to Littleton roundabout. I would suggest that if and when we get to that stage, we would need to carefully look at that. And I would tend to agree that if you look at the southern end of 10D and the southern end of 10C, there is stark differences. However, we're not just building that last kilometre of road. We are building, if those options were to come forward, we would be building the route in its entirety. And therefore, although looking specifically at the bottom end, there are obvious differences, when you look at the route as a whole, those differences clearly are diluted down. But I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying. The option to cross the canal and to cross Semmington Brook, yeah, it has difficulties associated with it. As I said in my analogy, and I apologise if it wasn't a very good analogy, but we've almost been at left field. We've almost received a new particulars for a house, which has caught our attention, and we need to look at it, and we need to investigate it, and we need to consider it. Doesn't mean that new house that's come in from left field is ultimately going to be the way forward. Who knows? We need to do our assessments and take that forward. But I believe you do raise a valid point.
Thank you. Could you also say, when you say that the A361 would need to possibly be enhanced because it would be joining one bypass with another, what would the enhancement entail?
I can't, I'm afraid, at this stage, and the fundamental reason is we haven't got that far.
Right.
So that's really where we are. What I would say is I'm just going to reshare my screen, if I may. Apologies, everybody, because I'd just like to pull back up a plan and perhaps allude to it. Again, David, could you just give me a nod when that appears, if you don't mind?
Yep, that's there now, Steve.
Thank you. If I can go back to this slide, which hopefully may be helpful. There is one particular issue which is somewhat troubling us at the moment, and we don't know where we're going to go with this or how we're going to go with this. But because of this troubling effect, it's why we think that there may be merit in 10D, and we need to investigate and find out. And that really comes back to this slide and this part of the network coming under a lot of pressure. Now, if we think about the road network in Melksham, we effectively, it's almost like an egg timer in many respects. We have a lot of network of roads up here at the top, which all feed down into one very thin route, which comes down to Littleton roundabout. And then the bottom end of the egg timer, we actually have 3 different routes going in different directions. So if you can imagine that egg timer and you turn it upside down and the sand struggles to get through the restriction, that's almost how we are seeing the do nothing situation if we did nothing and if things were to pan out. Now, if we bring 10C, again, lots and lots of ifs, if that was seen to be the preferred route and was ultimately adopted, if we bring 10C into here, we are actually doing nothing to address that potential bottleneck in the egg timer. 10D, coupled with an upgrade of the A361, might give us an argument that we've got 2 routes north-south instead of 1 route north-south, and therefore that egg timer effect isn't so pronounced. Again, apologies, I tend to use analogies all over the place. It might not be helpful, but that's something that's troubling us a little bit at the moment. Whether we need to consider the potential inclusion of 7C either now with any of these route options, or as a future dueling again sometime in the future. And until we do the traffic analysis, until we work the numbers through, it would be wrong of me to sort of give anything too definite and to steer you one way or the other. We need to see that through. That's why when 10D came out of left field and we sat down and we thought about it, it just triggered a few things that said to us, we better investigate this now, because if we don't and we discount it without the evidence to discount it, and the environmental impacts that you've alluded to may well be part of that evidence, we could end up in a public inquiry and somebody will say, did you consider this alternative? And we'll not be able to justify the position at that point. So we need to be robust and thorough in the works we do at this stage to effectively see us through that potential public inquiry a long way down. But I totally take your point about the costs and the environmental issues that you allude to, I think are very real. And clearly that's one of the reasons why we're wanting to do the walkover surveys to actually evidence that. So yeah, I think there's some very, very valid comments there. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Steve.
Right, David Finch is next, please.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, I suppose. The first is a general one, please, Steve. In terms of the movement from long list to short list, if something is ruled out at the long list evaluation stage and therefore doesn't reach it to the shortlist, does that automatically prohibit it from ever being raised again, or can it be resurrected after the shortlist has been prepared?
Okay, can I deal with that one first, if that's,
yeah, please.
That's okay? Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for the question. I think that's a good question. Again, if I could share my screen and allude to one of the slides that I've already highlighted earlier, I might be able to explain that. Again, David or Linda, if somebody can just give me a nod if that's visible. Thank you. On this list here, we only have an adopted route once a route is formally adopted. It seems fairly self-evident, but until Wiltshire Council Cabinet, or it might actually be the full council, sit down and there is a paper and a recommendation brought to Wiltshire Council and they formally adopt a route, and therefore that route effectively becomes part of planning policy, or it has some planning merit to it, we don't actually have an adopted route. So we at the moment at the long list, we are trying to, as rapidly as we can, although it's going to take us the end of a year, get through the short list into an adopted route situation. But until we cross that line, until we have a formally adopted route, everything really is up for reassessment as new information becomes available. So if something was to change, if the an obvious thing would be travel patterns at the moment. We think we know where we're heading, because I've shown you the matrix, and you can see where, based upon the works thus far, things seem to be coalescing, if you like. If the COVID situation means that there is a permanent change in travel patterns and travel performance, then perhaps the traffic analysis that we're doing at the moment needs to be changed. We are anticipating a change from national government in February of next year to update the traffic analysis works and guidance that we're being provided. And we think that is in part going to be in response to changing in travel patterns as a result of COVID and a lot more people working from home. Now, that in itself means we've got to reassess the travel and the traffic modelling. That then may throw up a different answer to the ones that we're seeing at the moment. So the short answer, David, is everything really is on the table until there is a policy adopted which says that's it now, everything's now fixed and that's the route.
Okay, thank you for that. My second question is a more wide-ranging question maybe, and that relates to the principle within the overall pack that was issued of looking at the A350 as being effectively a trunk road running from the M4 down to Bournemouth and Poole. And the approach that Wiltshire Council appears to have taken over many years is to develop the A350 almost on a piecemeal basis, small area by small area. Is there a plan in any way in terms of what that A350 is going to look like along its north-south route through Wiltshire, or is this only a piecemeal plan?
Okay, thank you again for that. I think that there has been a long-term recognition from Wiltshire Council as to the importance that the route as a whole serves, initially and most importantly for Wiltshire in the immediate area of West Wiltshire, Warminster up to Chippenham, and connecting all of those towns, but also the more strategic connections between the M4 and the south coast. Now, what you're seeing in terms of the let me use that slide there as the sort of aide memoire, if you like. Got to remember that this scheme that we are pursuing at the moment has come about through an opportunity to bid to the DFT for funding. DFT themselves have strategic goals and they're only going to fund schemes that meet their criteria. And we could only access this fund through something called the Western Gateway, which is the sub-national transport body. So Wiltshire Council actually had to submit schemes to the Western Gateway organisation, which is Gloucestershire, the Bristol area, North Somerset, Wiltshire and Dorset. And it was that collective body, that sub-national transport body, that actually prioritised this as one of their schemes. So we are accessing these funds through, not directly from Wiltshire, but through that regional transport body. And that transport body includes Dorset, and it actually connects, it actually spans this area, the gateway to the Western Peninsula, effectively. And it was seen as a priority because of its strategic importance across the whole of the subnational transport body area. Again, on the website, there is a link, I think it's on the right-hand side that we've provided, which actually takes you to the information which was submitted to the subnational transport body or authority, and you'll see there the schemes that they prioritised. It includes this. It included several schemes around Bristol Airport, I think. It included the M4 Junction 17. It included a scheme down, I think, in Salisbury for upgrading some of the routes down there. So it's not just a one-off, it's part of a bigger picture. But certainly Wiltshire Council has for a long time been looking to upgrade the A350. I think the Chippenham bypass, as it is at the moment, was built around about 25 years ago. And that was built with the intention of seeing dualling coming forward or allowing for dualling to come forward. And that sort of approach has been taken as opportunities present themselves, which is only when money becomes available through central government, to be honest.
Okay,
Again, I hope that helps.
thank you.
Thank you, David. I've still got the screen share up,
Sorry,
Steve, so I can't see if
I
anybody
beg your
else.
pardon. I am sorry.
Okay, okay. And for some reason, nobody's picture's coming up on pages 2 and 3, so I'm afraid I don't know if anybody else wants to be. I've got Nick Westbrook, and I've got well, I've got Tom and Mandy again, but is there anybody else before that? No, okay, Nick, off you go, and then Tom and Mandy again. You're muted, Nick. Oh, and Richard Kendall, I can see you waving as well.
Nick, forgive me, I believe you're muted, Nick.
You're still on mute.
How's that?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve, for a very interesting presentation. I have to say, in preference of what I'm going to, questions I want to ask, I do feel it's a little bit like deja vu. In answer to your question, to the last question, you talked about the longer term thing. And when I was a county councillor, going back a very long time ago, we did have this very detailed, similar discussion. And actually, I thought a lot of your slides were remarkably in synergy with those. The first question is, what has changed in terms of the various sort of advantages and disadvantages of the routes to bring routes 7, 8 and 9 back into play? Because when I was a county councillor, they were all knocked out by a policy of the county council. And I think it's confusing to the public to bring it back again now, unless there is some very good reason to explain, to justify that. The eastern route, and as you rightly say, there were several corridors for the eastern route that were then being talked about. My second question then is, how would the eastern routes 10, A, B, C, and possibly D now be affected, or what impact would that have on creating housing land inside it? Because clearly that's an issue. And the third thing is, you mentioned in your presentation the corridor that's being protected for the canal. At the moment, that only comes to into the town centre of Melksham. It then has to proceed out and towards Chippenham and Swindon. I didn't notice anything in any of the slides that indicated where that might be likely to go, because clearly that would have a major cost implication if it wasn't done at or around the same sort of time. I hope that's clear.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for those 3 questions. I've jotted them down. Hopefully I'll be able to deal with them all. What's changed to bring 7, 8 and 9 back into play? My answer to that would be that in this current round of funding, they were never out of play. People may have thought that 10C, as it was depicted, because it was the best performing route coming through the SOBC work, was the one and only and the way forward, or 1 or 2 of those. That, I'm afraid, is a bit of a misconception. The SOBC work effectively establishes the need for the scheme and does very, very high level work to work through the economics and the potential viability to see whether there is a scheme there to be found. That would be my take. As it happens, at SOBC, the 10s were the better performing, and therefore they are inevitably the ones that people are drawn to as, well, that's obvious, isn't it? But as I was explaining to a previous questioner, until we get a route adopted, formally adopted by Wiltshire Council, all options really are on the table. We've got to go through this sifting long list to short list to preferred option. And we're trying to get there, obviously, as quick as we can. We can see where the general travel is going. But yeah, I don't think that 7, 8 and 9 were ever taken off. I would go even further, and I would say that I don't think 1 to 6 were ever taken off either, and that there is merit in some of the no road options, not as standalone options, but to sit alongside a bypass route. The 10s and the housing question.
Sorry, can I bust back on that one, Steve, if I may? Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but my understanding was that we went through this whole exercise, including consultation, God knows how many years ago. I even remember doing a walkover of the end routes of 10, but that's neither here nor there. But my understanding was that Wiltshire Council did take off 7, 8 and 9. They discarded them. And part of the reasoning for that was that there was disputes going on around Westbury as well, and around Trowbridge. So my understanding was, it may well be this has changed as a result of time and council wanting to bring it back again. And I can understand that, and I understand the logic of doing it again. But it seems to me that if there is no strong case, then Wiltshire should be coming off the fence, as it were, and saying, we have looked at this before and we've actually discarded those. But is there some reason in the program that you've developed that really you have to look at all of them again, even though they're perhaps people need to have that steer that it's not necessary?
I think we need to, you could be alluding to something that's rather historic there. Certainly it's beyond my involvement with Wiltshire Council, or earlier than my involvement with Wiltshire Council. And I think that we've got to look at this as the current funding opportunity, and the SOBC that's been developed dates back from 2017. So this current scheme, this current evolution and attempt to try and devise a project and achieve funding for it really dates from 2017, updated in 2019, and now we're working forward to the OBC. Moving on to your question about the 10s and the housing question, Nick, I'm really going to have to duck that one, I'm afraid. The question of infill housing and where housing development may or may not come forward is a matter for the local plan review. That's a separate exercise altogether. I have no knowledge as to what that may or may not entail, and where that may be the case. I would tend to agree that if you look to Chippenham as an example, again, there is a western bypass, and it's fairly evident that everything inside that bypass has become urban expanse over time. Who knows what the development of Melksham may look like? That is a question for the local plan development and the local plan team. I think they are coming to consultation early part of next year. But that's something that I'm afraid I cannot comment on, and I'm not involved with at all. Your final question, I think, was in connection with the canal and the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal. There is actually a core policy in Wiltshire's policy documentation, which actually protects the ancient or the old route, the disused route of the canal. And if I can again just share my screen very briefly, and I'll just refer to the constraints plan. So if I move to here,
yep, you're there, Steve.
On the constraints plan, which again is available through the consultation material, you'll see there a double-headed sort of lilac-y coloured arrow, which is the core policy 16 of the Wiltshire core strategy, which is the Wilkes and Berkshire Canal, which actually ties down back in with the Kennington Avon Canal down towards Semmington. It travels to the west of the A350 as it is at the moment, comes up to somewhere near Farmers Roundabout, don't exactly know where, and then it finds its way round the northeast part of the town and then travels off up towards Chippenham. That in itself has been recognised as a constraint, and if we are to build a road east of the town, then we would not only need to negotiate the floodplain of the River Kennet, but we would need to be dealing with the Kennet with the Historic Canal Trust to understand what proposals they've got for reopening or re-establishing that route, and what we may or may not need to do in terms of crossing that route itself. So again, that is on the constraints, and we don't know what that solution would be, but we're aware of it.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Tom and Mandy now.
Hello, it's Tom. Thank you, Madam Chairman. The way 10C and 10D are presented, it completely kind of distorts the validity of any public feedback because they seem to be similar. As an environmental impact assessment been registered as having taken place on both routes?
Thank you for that. We are in the process of trying to undertake walkover surveys at the moment.
Right.
So we've written to a considerable number of landowners in the areas that we think are of particular interest and where we think it would be worthwhile doing that very exercise. Some landowners have been very happy for us to access their land, and as such we can observe the flora, the fauna, the habitat, and indeed potential visual implications of routes. Some landowners have unfortunately not as yet given us the consent to do so. That is an ongoing process, and that's something that is being developed. In terms of the route on a page type comparisons, again, I would allude back to the comment I made earlier. It's very difficult for us to make a presentation and pitch it at the right level, which is suitable for the various different types of engagement that people want. Some people just want to look at it at a very high level and be able to immediately express their views. Other people want to look at it in a lot more detail. The reds, I beg your pardon, the reds and the ambers and the greens, the graduation of that bands things. So although things may be in a similar band, one of the routes might be at the top end of a band, another one of the routes might be at the bottom end of the band. So by all means, use it as a guide. It's a work in progress. It's an evolving piece of evidence, and we're trying to evolve that through the walkover surveys, and it will change in time. Clearly, it's where we are at this point in time. That's really all I can say.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Right, Richard, and I'm sorry for everyone that I'm going to have to make this the last question, as we've got another meeting, and I've allowed it to overrun a little bit because I started late. But over to you, Richard.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. Steve, I'm going back to where Mandy was talking about in her question right at the beginning. So it's the difference between C and D. And what I'm really feeling is a big disconnect between the way in which you describe 10D, could be very expensive, having to go over floodplain, things you would want to avoid, and the way in which you've portrayed it in the consultation material, which makes it look as though it is very similar to 10C, whereas you've agreed that it isn't. And so there's a really big disconnect there. And so feeding into Tom's point, it does actually mean that the public consultation feedback that you're getting from this, I think, is skewed from the way that you have presented it versus the way that you describe it when you're on these calls. But could you please go back to the slide where you showed the different routes and just explain again this bit about maybe having to dual part of 7, which justifies the additional cost of 10. My understanding is that most of the traffic that we are trying to mitigate here is not traffic which originates in Melksham. So I'm not quite sure I understand your hourglass analogy and what your concern is about option C, which option D maybe brings back into play.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I apologise if, first of all, on the comparisons of 10C and 10D, there's no intention to represent one more favourably than the other. What we've presented is an honest and we believe a totally open presentation as to where we are at the moment. Works evolve, works move. Clearly, these are emerging outcomes, and it's only once we get into more detail and we can look at these various different options in more detail that things will firm up. We're hoping that we will, through this process, be able to reduce our list of options down to possibly 2 or 3 as shortlist, and then we would be coming back to consultation again next year. If I can just share my screen and go back to the point that you've just raised and trying to explain a little bit further again, if I can find the right slide. Yeah, if it's this slide here. So it's probably a poor analogy, but the analogy of the hourglass. If you think of Melksham as being a body of roads and traffic trying to get through a narrow funnel, which is currently the A350, the only route going across the canal or under the canal and across Semmington Brook at the moment, that clearly is a bottleneck, or it's a potential bottleneck in the future. Might not be now, but it might be in the future. Once you get to Littleton roundabout here at the south, you've then got traffic to go to Trowbridge, traffic to go on its way on the A350, past Trowbridge, down towards Westbury and perhaps beyond. And you've got traffic turning to the left, as it would be, to perhaps head over through Seend and over towards Devizes. So I see that as 3 spurs going off, leading into one link, and then you get up to the top end of Bower Hill. You've then got the A350 itself. I do beg your pardon, that wasn't very clever of me. The A350 itself going one way, and you've got the town centre roads leading in, and you've got the eastern periphery distributor roads. So my analogy of an hourglass really is just to highlight up that if we were to do nothing, then this link here could become the constraining element of the road network as it is at the moment. Now, fortuitously, when Semmington Bypass was built, the approach taken by Wiltshire Council, in keeping with Chippenham Bypass and elsewhere, has actually devised that road and secured the land to allow for the dualling. The aqueduct is double width. I think there's an access bridge to a farm, which again is double width. The bridge over the river, over the Semmington Brook, is only single width, but I think there is land there available to build another bridge alongside. So future-proofing and possible dualling of this may be an option in the future. If we have 10D, let's say 10D comes around and joins in here, 7C, or the route there, 7C, would still be there. So we would effectively have 2 north-south links coming from Melksham down towards the Littleton roundabout, not the one. And that's why I think that this thing that's troubling us at the moment is, do we have to dual 7C? Do we have to do that? And if we do have to do it, do we have to do it as part of the bypass project, in which case we're looking at costs of 10C and part of 7C, and we could argue that then skews the comparisons as it is at the moment, or do we actually build a bypass and then come back at a later date and complete that dualling only when that constraint actually becomes and presents itself? That's something that we are grappling with at the moment, and as I say, that's why we've really, 10D has got a lot of problems, if that's the right word, associated with it. A lot of, you'll recall, I was thinking about the deliverability. There could be some serious deliverability questions about whether we can actually build a road through here. and they themselves may sort of eliminate 10D as an option. We need to do that analysis and we need to work that through. I hope that sort of helps explain. It's probably not as complete as you would be hoping for, but all I can do is tell you where we are at the moment, I'm afraid.
Right, well, thank you very much, Steve, for coming. That was very thorough, and I'm sure we're all leaving. I mean, I've heard it before, but it's always good to hear it again. But we're all going to be leaving with a lot more information buzzing around in our heads, and a lot more correct information as well, I might add, which is one of the reasons why we asked you to come, was to put it to the public so that they were quite sure that they knew exactly what was happening and what stage we were at and how things might develop. But thank you very much, and thank you also to all the people that have turned up tonight to listen to that. I can see that there are over 60 attendants, and that is fabulous, and that's a kind of interaction that we really want with people who live around here. We want to hear what you've got to say. We need to know what you want to do, what you like, what you don't like, and it helps Steve and his colleagues make those important decisions. So David, did you want to say something? David McKnight?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I've sent a message on chat to everybody in the meeting this evening that if you have questions that we've not had time to answer this evening, if you'd like to submit it to the email address in the chat message, which is the Town Hall email address, we will collate these together, pass them on to Steve and the Highways, Major Project Highways team, so you can get a response. And we'd be delighted to do that for you.
Right.
Can I just add something, Chair, if you don't mind?
Yes,
first of all, thank you to yourself and indeed staff at Melksham Town Council for the opportunity this evening. It's always good to, as I've said earlier, I would have been delighted to have come to the town hall and to have had these sort of interactions face to face, and we could have looked at drawings. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation, that's not where we are. Hopefully, when we get to the next round of consultation next summer, we'll be in a very different place, and we'll be able to revert back to those sort of more traditional methods. But I hope that was of use. Please, I would encourage everybody to participate in the questionnaire and the online survey. I was speaking to colleagues in communications earlier today, and I think that we've had now in excess of around about 600 responses so far. So I think that's pretty good. All of that will be collated and will be produced into a report, which I'm hoping when we come to the next round of consultation, we will be able to present what the findings of this round were, and that will hopefully people will be able to see some of the themes that come out. But yeah, please do engage with us. We want to hear people's views, and if people want to do it through the town council rather than individually, again, that's fantastic.
Lovely.
So thank you
very much. Right, now it's our Community Development Committee now. I'd like to start. You're all very welcome to stay, but I'll quite understand if you feel that you've got more important things to do with your meeting, just so long as none of the committee depart, please. Okay, so I'll give everybody a few minutes to sort themselves out, a minute or two.
Thank you, Pat. It's been most informative, and I'm going to leave you now.
Okay, I didn't see who that was, but thank you very much.
Interesting. Yes. I've not Pat. Why can't I see Pat?
Yeah, I couldn't see anybody on page 2 and 3, which was a bit irritating, but never mind. I suppose it's just too much for my computer. It's full council at Trowbridge tomorrow, and there's over 130 people on that, and that's why we all just have little pictures, and sometimes you see yourself along the bottom of the screen, but most of the time you don't see yourself at all. You know, once you've logged in, you don't know you're there. All these 4 messages now. Let's see what they are. Some thank yous. That's nice. Right, okay, I think we'd better start the meeting then. Right, so first of all, welcome to Community Development Committee. Are there any members of the public still here who would like to ask a question? If you are still here and would like to ask a question, please make yourself known to me. Either via the chat or by waving. There's a little hand somewhere, but I'm sorry, I can't remember how you do it. Right, doesn't look like there's anybody left. Right, okay. Right, any apologies today? Linda, where are you? I've lost you.
Chair, I'm not aware of any apologies for this evening.
Oh, right. Are you doing the meeting, David?
Yes, I am. That's great. Thank you, Pat.
Right, okay, no apologies. Any declarations of interest from any members of the committee about any of the items on the agenda tonight? No, I'm not getting any response from that one. Right, minutes. So the minutes of the last committee meeting, which was on the 3rd of August. Has anybody got any issues with any of the items? If not, I would propose that we approve them. Terry, is that a seconding or a question?
It's a question, actually,
Okay. Yeah.
because I'm put down as sort of attending rather than as being on the committee. I don't suppose it really matters. I'm there.
Okay, all right.
And I will second it.
Oh, thank you very much. And can I have all in favour, please, of accepting them? Thank you very much. Okay, so item 4, is it item 4 or was that something else? The community hub. I've got it down as item 4. Okay, so who was going to speak on this? Was this something David was going to speak on, or was it Miriam? I've forgotten.
This was Miriam, Chair.
Miriam, yeah. Thank you, Miriam. Over to you.
Hi. So the community hub meeting that took place, the notes were circulated to the people who were part of that meeting, and the idea was that any further ideas or suggestions could be added to that. A few things came in by email, but I don't know if members want to continue the discussion here to add those thoughts, or was there anything else to do on that document?
These are new things that weren't on the original one.
Yeah, there are a few extra thoughts.
Yeah. Are there very many, Miriam?
I can just read out the ones that I've seen.
Yeah, please.
That's in terms of running a cafe, there was preference that a cafe continue to be run in the Art House Cafe if it's a community hub, that the Assembly Hall staff had been interested in getting involved, that different voluntary groups could run a cafe and take turns on.
It's gone funny. We've lost you, Miriam. Are you back, Miriam?
Different days.
Oh.
So having an old people's day and a young people's day, and different days to provide advice and support to groups on a sort of theme per day, and that it should be a one-stop shop of information for the whole community.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Do we need to discuss these now, or can we just leave it for the moment and go on? Yeah, Adrienne?
I'm happy just to go on, but I do believe it's really important that at this point we send these notes to Melksham Without Parish Council, because although it will be hopefully in the Art House Cafe, we will be actually, it will be going out to the whole of Melksham and beyond. Maybe even more than Melksham Without Parish Council, maybe it needs to go to all the parish councils and the area board as well, because this is not just going to be a community hub for the town. This is a community hub for the area, and we need to get buy-in from everybody. And I'm not talking about financial buy-in. I'm talking about moral and emotional buy-in, really.
Yeah.
So I'd like to recommend that we do send these notes on. And I presume the best thing now is to have another meeting, Miriam.
I think so.
Okay, so we'll fix up a date. We don't need to do that now, do we? No, you'll need to consult on that. Right, okay, so yeah, do we need to actually
Sorry,
take a
Pat,
vote?
sorry, can I interrupt you? I apologise.
sure.
When we send these, if we can come up with a date before we send the notes out, we could ask for, you know, anybody who is, if they've got a councillor or an officer who's interested, to come along to that meeting as well, because it'll be a Zoom meeting. It's not difficult to pop along to a Zoom meeting, and then we'd get some more feedback. Sorry, Pat.
That's okay, good idea. Right, okay, Miriam, I think we've decided what your next move is going to be on that then. Thank you very much. Do we need to take a vote on it or anything, or just note it?
Just note it.
I think, yeah, I would just note it, Chair. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much. Right. Item 5, the Community Expo and Volunteer Fair. I think, David, you were going to do that, weren't you?
No, this one's Miriam again, Chair.
Oh, Miriam again. Oh, right, okay.
I'll get through them quickly. So I put a report together about an alternative for a community expo, as the community groups haven't had a chance to promote themselves in a big way, but also to network amongst each other. And previously with the grants awards, we used to have a big event where they could all talk to each other and have tea and everything, and that's obviously not happening this year. So I thought perhaps an alternative would be a way of setting up a virtual, to start off with, a virtual network where there could be regular meetings where groups, leaders of groups, organisers and chairs could come together, and we set a theme for each session, and people could ask questions, give advice, share resources, and have a presentation or something. But I thought that before creating such a thing, we need to write to the groups to see if there would be any interest, and if so, how they would like that to be.
Yeah, that's great. And I like the idea of a theme, so that they actually have something, they know what they're coming to the meeting for. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Has anybody got any comments on that? Anything they want to add? Adrienne?
Worth a try. Sounds like a really good idea. Let's go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. Any more comments about it?
Yeah, Pat, if I may.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, Miriam and I have been talking about this, and we think, you know, the idea is good, and you know, if it works with the community groups, this is perhaps something we could extend out, and you know, bring to the business community as well. A different, obviously, a different get together, but the same basic purpose, to try and get the businesses working together until such time as we can get them together physically.
Yeah, yeah. I think we briefly discussed this before lockdown, or right at the beginning of lockdown, didn't we, David?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, okay. Right, that's another one to note then, and we'll look forward to some progress on that. Thank you, Miriam. Right, item 6, the 800th Charter commemorative benches. I understand there's been some progress on that.
Yeah, I think this one's me, Chair.
Yes, yeah, I knew you were there somewhere, David.
Yeah, it's my turn. We thought if we kept swapping it around, then you know it would stop people getting bored listening to one of us. Yeah, we've got the benches. We have a thanks to the KGV subcommittee, we have a proposed location plan for the benches. What this committee tasked us to do was to look at how we could interpret those benches. And in a previous meeting, you've looked at the scripts for a historical fact linked to each of the 8 of the 100 years of you know, of the market charter. We have a model now for the how we're actually going to display the script on each bench, and you can see there in the report that's with you there, you can see at the bottom of the first page an example which is mocked up, and the plan is to have a short synopsis of the historical fact, and then a QR code linking to a more extensive script on a website, and also to allow an appropriate person to put an audio file in at the same time, so people can either read it or listen to it. They can access it through a QR code, or we would make the web address available as well. So that's where we are. Miriam has got some costing together from a local sign company that can put QR codes onto appropriate signage, and they're recommending a 2mm and a printed gold aluminium plate of around 120mm by 240, and the cost of each one will be about £96. So the total cost of the 8 benches was £768. Now that's on the basis of one quote. I mean, clearly we could look at other quotes, but that's where we are with the first one.
Okay, Terry, and then Adrienne. Oh, and then Kathy.
Right, we've just had some plaques done for the Friends Garden to mark commemorative trees and things, and that was done through the Cobbler's Bench, who do it by another company, because I got the envelope and it was sort of just addressed to them. So I was very pleased with the work. So I could just ask, have you approached them, or can we approach them?
I'm looking at Miriam actually here.
Yes, yeah, I haven't got a price back from them yet, so it's an ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay. Possibly the limiting factor is whether they can actually reproduce QR codes. That might be the limiting factor. But
yeah, well, it's the company that they deal with. Yeah, they might.
Adrienne?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about QR codes, actually. I mean, I think it's really important that we have the QR code on there. I think we do want more information. That was one of the exciting things about being able to you have a little, a strap line, but people can find out more about it. But we do need more than just the one quote. That's all I was going to say. So if Terry's come up with one suggestion, and I'm sure there are other printers around, but it isn't. I mean, I'm printing a QR code is a very specialized thing to do. If it's slightly out, it won't work. So yeah, so thank you, Miriam and David, and just keep moving it forward, I think.
Yeah. Kathy, then John.
I was pretty much going to say the same as Terry. Terry probably knows that, and the fact that maybe we should try and use a local independent business to try and do it and try and generate the business within town. But if that's not possible, then obviously we'll go elsewhere. But yes, pretty much what Terry was going to say. Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Chair. I was just slightly shocked by the price for these. I think that's an extraordinarily high price. I may not be understanding the material correctly, but we've just had some signage printed for Canberra on painted aluminium, which has got QR codes on, because we've got all our zap yourself to come into the building codes printed everywhere. And I was getting those for about £15 a sign at A4 size. So I think, now admittedly that's not a Melksham company. We have to be very price driven, but I think when you're talking that sort of difference in cost, it is worth exploring. So I'm happy to share the details offline with you about who we used, but I think it's worth double checking about alternatives.
Okay, thanks, John. David?
Yeah, John, just a quick question, if I may. Are those signs that you've got, are they being used out of doors, or are they indoor signs?
Sorry, I muted myself again. No, they are external signs. It's painted aluminium, so they're hard-wearing, hardy signs. It's basically the similar sort of material to road signs, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, no, they're up and they're outside. We've used them a lot for signage, and they are very. If anyone's ever been to the Canberra Centre and you've seen all the signs we've got outside, the welcome to the Canberra Centre, the arrows pointing in the different directions, the big signs saying all our COVID signage outside, all of the outside signage is by this company, and it's very cheap.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I might sound a bit dim asking this, but are they vandal proof? You know, the QR sign bit, I mean.
Frankly, no, because they could be defaced, which would mean they couldn't be scanned.
Yes.
But it's very hard to know, you know, how we could actually make a sign like that vandal proof. I mean, if we can get the price down to more acceptable levels, then, you know, we could, you know, periodically replace them if we had to. But don't forget the web address linking to the same page is there as well. So there's two ways of getting to the same site: QR code and web address. So if one gets vandalized, then we could always, you know, people could look at the other.
Okay, right, thanks. Okay, so so we're going to explore, is it one, or we're waiting for the cobbler's bench one? Yes, Miriam? Yeah, and we're going to have a look at the one that John suggested. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Yep. Do we need to note that, or do we need any kind of a vote or something?
I suspect, Chair, that the vote should come when the committee decides to purchase.
Yeah, yeah, okay, right.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks very much. Okay, so that's that one dealt with. Wasn't there something else about the commemorative benches that I heard today? About where they were going to go?
Yes, there's I think we circulated a plan of proposed locations, which is being determined by the KGV subcommittee. But I'm sure Adrienne would be delighted for any feedback from the committee here on that.
Is there any?
Yes. Walked around the park many times, Miriam and I. And Linda, I think, as well, working out where to put them.
Okay, yeah, all right. We'll leave that one then for the moment. Thanks. Right, number 7, dog owners in King George V Park to receive an update from the Community Development Officer, which is
David.
No,
David again, yeah.
In this particular case.
That's me. So at the last meeting, it was resolved to run a poster competition to encourage people to keep their dogs on leads. Yeah. At the time, the excuse me, the business admin apprentice Taylor was working on a different poster competition about encouraging people to pick up after their dogs, and that's just been completed. They had artwork from children in a lyric school. 10 winners were chosen, and their designs have been made into designs that will go out shortly. So there'll be a press in the winter newsletter, a press piece announcing this. And at that point, we can launch the next one, which is about encouraging people to keep their dogs on leads. And we'll go to wider to more schools with that one. But yeah, it's in progress.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. I remember helping to pick the winners on that one, and I should have announced it as one of my mayor's announcements, shouldn't I? But perhaps it was just as well I didn't. Right, okay. Looking forward to the results of that one then, Miriam, and judging and possibly helping to judge the results. Thank you. Right, Christmas activities. Is this another one for you, Miriam? Who's going to do it?
This one's me. This one's me, Chair.
Right. Okay.
I mean, this is work that actually bridges the work of this committee and that of economic development. But we're just mindful that this particular committee at the last meeting asked for some update tonight on this subject. And Miriam and I are putting this together as we start to understand what life is going to look like post the 2nd of December. So all this is really contingent on what happens then. But first of all, in terms of the community activities, we're putting together a video, and Miriam's doing the videography of the making of Melksham Christmas lights. And we have a guest video editor who will put it together for us. A video of the volunteers, the arrival of the tree, the installation of the lights, some little sound bites of the volunteers, just to bring the whole thing to life. And then we can then share that on social media channels, but we can also make it available to the business community as well, as a way of them sharing it and encouraging people to come into town to see the lights and also to do some shopping. So it'll work on both sides, community and business. Miriam's putting together a compilation of charitable Christmas activities taking place in the community, either virtual activities or real life activities, and we'll be promoting that on Facebook and our other social channels, just to get people engaged with Christmas celebrations and to join together in a safe way with local community people. And Miriam and the team in the town hall are putting together a Melksham Town Council Christmas newsletter, which will go in the December issue of Melksham News. And it'll look back over some positive accomplishments that the council has done, despite a really difficult year. I mean, it has been difficult, but we have achieved as a council some really, really good things, and we want to be able to celebrate that, especially as the mood of the nation will start to lift as more and more vaccines become available. I mean, the third one, the Oxford vaccine, has been announced today, is becoming very close to release. And the mood of people will improve as a result. I mean, all of a sudden we can see a way out of this, and it's important, I think, to capitalize on that. In terms of the business activities, we've launched the town council's Christmas shop window competition, and the mayor and the deputy mayor will judge that again. We've timed the judging so we can get the winner's roll of honour and a picture spread in the last edition before Christmas, which is actually the 17th of December. So hopefully, that will tempt people who perhaps haven't been into town as much as they could be. So let's let Vanessa in. To come back in and do some last minute Christmas shopping before Christmas itself. So the timing actually works really, really well. We've also already had quite a bit of interest in the shop window competition, and what I'll be doing in the next day or two is actually emailing everybody who has taken part in previous years to alert them if they haven't responded already, and also to start a campaign on social media to spread the word. We want as many businesses to take part as possible, because the more time they spend on their shop windows, then the more it will encourage people into the festive spirit and hopefully into town as well. We will continue the Melksham Business Bulletin. We'll publish on the 3rd of December and the 17th of December, and then we're going to take a short break until New Year. And on the Melksham High Street .co.uk website, I'm busy building a special Christmas offers page and encouraging shopkeepers to put special offers onto that website to drive traffic and hopefully get people to go into town and actually take advantage of the offers that are there. And we will start to profile those offers and the businesses themselves on social media, starting as we start to come out of lockdown and the businesses open up again, right the way through to Christmas. And if there's an appetite for it within the business community, we could extend that into the New Year sales. Miriam's working with local property agents to see how we can brighten up any empty shop windows with artwork, to brighten up a window which is otherwise looks quite dark and nondescript, to see if we can put some artwork in there to brighten them up. But we just need to be very careful how we deal with business rates, and that we don't fall foul of the business rates demand that might potentially be levied. And in addition, the mayor and deputy mayor will be signing and distributing the town council's Christmas card to a list of recipients. The card is in production now. We're delighted that we have a a really lovely photograph for this year's card. And, we're expecting it to look absolutely super when it comes off the press. And I would imagine it'll be ready in just over a week, which is towards the end of towards the end of this month. Now, as other opportunities come forward, then I suggest we add these to the list. But I suspect in all of this, we're not going to be able to. I mean, they keep saying that Christmas is going to look different this year, no matter what. I mean, it's just a case of we'll know by about Thursday precisely what they mean about that. But I suspect there will be some limitations. So things like, for example, having a Santa's grotto and you've got children up close with Santa is going to be an absolute no-no this year, unfortunately, which is something we'd have loved to have done, but I don't think it's going to happen. And even if it was permitted, I don't think it's wise. So let's let Vanessa back in again. So yeah, so that's where we are on Christmas, Chair. You're muted, Pat.
I'm muted because my phone started ringing. I've just had a message from one of the Bloom team asking if you could promote the calendars and the Christmas cards on your business plan, please, on your business.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Yeah.
I can build a page for Bloom and put it on there and link it to the eBay site, if that helps.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. I'm sure they'll all be very pleased. Yeah.
By the end of the day, it's just like any other business in the town. So what we're offering is exactly the same as we'd offer any business who came forward. Yeah. So we're delighted to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Is there anything else anybody else wants to mention? I've got Adrienne and then I've got Vanessa.
Thank you. I mean, once again, Melksham's going to look fabulous at Christmas. There's no two ways about that. One of the things that has excited me, and it is on Facebook only at the moment, Miriam, and I don't know, I did ask them to get in touch with you, and that's the interactive map that's going to have the houses up, which Claire Richter is putting forward. It just sounds really, really exciting to be able to go out for a walk with your children in the evening and know where these houses are. Have you had any links with her, or can you, or what?
Yes, I saw the thing on Facebook as well, and I got in touch to say how can we support you and promote you. So that will be one of the activities at Christmas that are going on that will be included in any publicity that we do. So as soon as her map is ready, we can totally promote that on all of our channels.
Fantastic. I just think it's a really lovely idea, actually, and quick and well, I don't know about easy to do, but it should be reasonably quick to do once we've seen where the houses with lights are, because if you're not going to be able to do an awful lot with your children, at least you can go for a walk early evening and see the lights. So thank you very much for that, and thank you, for thinking about Christmas, because often December the 1st comes and you sort of realise that Christmas is upon us, but it takes, as we all know from the lights, it takes months of work beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. Anything else? Who was the other person with their hand up? Oh, Vanessa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I've joined today on my my phone as opposed to my laptop, so I can't actually see how many people are on. And I also apologize for sort of coming in halfway through this meeting. So I don't really know exactly everything that David's talked about, but David, did you mention the significant amount of research that you did on things like an ice rink in the marketplace at all? Have you mentioned that?
No, we haven't, because I mean, to be honest, Vanessa, I think the current COVID situation.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Having said that, the research that we've done, and we've done a lot of research on it, and our assembly hall team have a lot of knowledge on this subject, and the general feeling is that the cost of ice rinks in general are so high, it would put us at a serious financial risk to do so. And also, given the fact that if we put one into the assembly hall, our new hall and our new floor in there would be potentially wrecked, but also it would be quite hard to get the necessary ventilation in there, even if it was possible to do it at all. I mean, it's a great idea, but we understand that one of the big ice rinks that takes place locally is not going to take place. And whilst the reason for it might be ostensibly COVID, the cost of delivering it is the real reason behind it for not being done this year.
David, it's more than anything else. I just wanted the committee to know that it was something that was researched heavily as an option, and that, you know, it's not as if it hasn't been thought of. And I just at least wanted the committee to know that, and for the people of Melksham to know that it was definitely researched very well. The reality is, like David said, it's the cost involved. When we looked at even just a standard sort of 10-meter by 14-meter ice rink that came with all the kit, all the training, the boot room, everything, for about 8 weeks, we were looking at about between 50 and 60,000 pounds. And that doesn't include the cost of the electricity that you would need to have on essentially 24/7. Plus then, of course, things like security. I think it's fair to say you're probably looking at a 6-figure sum. And the only time that'll really happen is when I win the lottery. I'll make sure I make a nice donation, and we make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'll keep you to that.
I know you will.
Win the lottery. Right. Is there anything else anybody else wants to bring up? No. Okay. Right. Thank you, everyone, for that. We'll move on to the Melksham Hearts Art Project. Now, who is going to speak about that?
That's me, Chair. You've got a run of reports from me at the moment. Although Miriam and I have put these reports together.
Yeah, both your names are on them. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, there was discussion last time that there was a potential £5,000 in the budget for work in the underpass. I'm advised that figure was actually only £1,000. But so I'll just let somebody in. What I have done is I've asked the town clerk if she could make the £5,000 available in the budget that we discussed last time for work moving forward. Clearly, we can't guarantee that council as a whole will pass that budget, but we've made the request. And I think that on that basis, we're at a point where we can start to look at, you know, how we solicit projects for a community arts scheme, how we evaluate them, how we decide one against another. So perhaps bring together some priorities that we want to achieve so that we can do some meaningful evaluation and say, well, project A is going to deliver more for us than project B, or project A and C together will outperform project D, or however we decide to do it. So I think my suggestion to you, Chair, is we need a little working group that can pull some criteria together and bring it back to this committee. And as projects come forward, we can do the valuation of them. We can do some indicative costings, and I would suggest then that the budget notwithstanding, that this then becomes a fixed item on the agenda of this committee every time it meets as to how. But we also then will need to decide, or the council will need to decide, how we allocate funds to projects. I mean, do they devolve that responsibility to this committee, or does this committee make a recommendation to council, or whatever? But I think the route by which a project becomes from paper into reality needs to be determined. Not just the evaluation of that project, but what its route to funding is.
Okay, right. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so that sounds like a good idea and a a way to go. So we need to know, did we actually determine who wanted to be on the working group when it came up last time, or did
No,
we?
we didn't.
No, we didn't. No. Okay, so that's the first step then. Who would like to be on it? I'd like to. Hayley would. Hayley. Who else? Adrienne, Vanessa. Oh, Sue. Yeah, I can see you, Sue. Right, well, that's enough to be going on with. So the next thing is for the 5 of us to actually meet. So I think we need to, would that be a better idea if we just arrange that between ourselves?
I think so, Chair, but do it rather than later.
Okay, right. Well, leave it to me and I'll sort that out. We can decide from there. We can go on from there. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Has anybody, oh yeah, David, you got something else to say, but I was just going to ask quickly if anybody had any instant projects that they just thought that they might do. But David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to give you an indication of the type of thing that might be possible, Miriam's put together this suggestion. I'm just going to share screen if I could.
Yeah.
We're getting good at this sharing screen, David.
Is it there, Pat?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Miriam's calling the window of thanks, and it is something perhaps that we could use empty shop windows or large spaces in the town for. The principle is that the gratitude is good for mental well-being. It makes people happier, more optimistic, which is what we're needing as we're coming out of this terrible pandemic. It can be seen to reduce depression, anxiety, it can improve mental health. So a community art project on gratitude could be a way to gather people's thanks and display them in the bright, colourful pieces of artwork around the town. This example is a mosaic of individual squares that combines into one large image when seen from afar. As I say, it could be in any large space, but perhaps a shop window. Now, we're lucky in that Miriam has experience of doing this type of work. So, for example, if the committee looked at this and felt that this was something that they would wish to support, we could actually develop this in-house, which will keep the budgets spent on this to a minimum, yet deliver something which is going to be very visible in the town. So really, we're just putting this forward as an idea. I'm just wondering whether Miriam has anything else you'd like to say against that.
I'd like to, Miriam, if you could just give me a brief description of how you would assemble one of these and what with. And
it's lots of little squares. So if each
paper.
Yeah, paper. So if people are invited to make a square, if it's 5 centimeters square, it could be on a post-it note, a bit of paper piece. It could be like a beautiful oil painting, or it could just be scribbled on the back of an envelope. It's a way of making it accessible. So anyone who wants to say thank you for anything, or I'm grateful for the sunshine, or thank you to my mum for looking after me, whatever, over 2020. And then all of them can be compiled together. We'd need to decide what the main image would be. I was thinking a rainbow would be the sort of obvious thing.
Yeah.
And then I pixelate, get an image, pixelate it on a computer, print it out so that it's a big bit of paper, and then stick all the squares on so that from a distance, the big image is seen, but from close up, you can see all these individual little works of art. But it's just an idea from this week. Also, I know that Councillor Brown has ideas about artwork in empty shops. So there's lots of options.
Can I jump in there and say I've done something incredibly similar on a big scale like that with postage stamps. It's absolutely amazing what you can do with we did a huge picture of Nelson Mandela, and we used postage stamps to do it with, and it was massive. And from a distance, it was absolutely obvious that we'd done Nelson Mandela. And as you get closer to it, you see postage stamps. But it's a brilliant idea. And I do you know what, Miriam? I did it about 10 years ago and completely forgotten it. So that's just brought that all back, and it's just lovely to do.
Hayley.
Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. And like we said, it's something that could be done, and it can be started relatively instantly as well. this is also something that could be an ongoing project. So it could be one piece of work after another that's set on a schedule, and we could have a set place for it, get local schools involved and do a school at a time. And actually, I mean, once this is all over and some of us are able to go into schools, it's a project that we could go into the schools and actually help with, and kind of it's teaching a new art form to children as well. It's another form of curriculum, it's a form of art therapy, there's so much to it, and it's also promoting the overall art project as well to younger generations. But you can also go into care homes and do stuff like that as well, you know, or if it's something that we could see if care homes want to contribute to, like you're saying with post-it notes, you know, if we send them a stack of coloured post-it notes and ask every resident to fill something out and send it back to us, then we can then compile it. It's, you know, I know this is something for the working group, I think, but the fact that it's come up straight now has got me going. So, but definitely,
it's
I think
exciting, Hayley.
Get this working group going, because this is something that, you know, potentially we could have the first art piece ready to go in January, and then we could have a fresh one every 4 to 6 weeks, you know, and just keep it going and keep that contact, which would be fantastic.
Brilliant, yeah. Kathy, do you want to say something?
I'll need 80 pieces of those 5 centimetre squares, please, as a minimum. If you want the staff to do it as well, make it 160.
Okay, right, thanks. Vanessa?
Thank you, Chair. And another quick one that I thought was really interesting, and Kathy might be able to tell you more about this, is art can also include things like having a living wall somewhere around town. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a living wall, but Kathy's got some great info on it. Kathy, why don't you explain what it is?
Thanks, Vanessa. Put me on the spot. Yeah, a living wall. They've had one installed in Bradford on Avon, and it's a series of planters that are fixed onto a frame that's attached to a wall, but they're very, very expensive to have it done professionally. But whether we might be able to produce something like that with our talented caretakers, don't know. Doesn't have to be huge, does it? You know, I mean, obviously the ideal place would be outside the Methodist church, wouldn't it, in town on the side of Chico Land, and that would be absolutely amazing. But we're talking tens of thousands to do that. But you know, maybe smaller scale, like underneath the fence on the wall next to Lloyd's Bank or something, you know, sort of 2 by 2 meters or something like that. But yeah, just limited by your own imagination, aren't you?
Yeah, Hayley, and then I'd like to hear from Sue, because you it was said that you had some ideas as well. So compose yourself, Sue. Hayley?
Yeah, as you just said about it being very expensive to do the living wall thing as well, it's got me thinking about art as gardening and environmental stuff as well, which is another angle you can take. And again, this is something that could go into the working group, but again, getting groups and communities to come out and plant bulbs that when they grow it spells Melksham and things like that. There's, you know, and lots of different options to do that, and that can all go in as part of the Bloom entries for Southwest in Bloom and Melksham in Bloom and the Gardeners Club, and there's so many aspects here. And I do think that we definitely need to get going with the working group so that we can report back to the next one. And you know, if we come up with a list of ideas, then it's just a matter of, you know, fitting them in as to when we can do them, what groups we can involve, and how we get going, and the budget wise obviously as well. So I think it's a really exciting project, and I think it's just a matter of getting going with it now.
Yeah, okay, Sue?
Right, thank you, Chair. Hayley and previous speakers have been talking about the future, doing something in January, February. That's absolutely fine. That's as it should be. 2.5 weeks ago, I started making inquiries about putting works of art into shop windows. It's been quite frustrating, actually. I can tell from the owners' reactions that some of them are very frustrated because we're in lockdown again. So I've sort of made allowances for a bit of negativity, unfortunately, but that's not stopping me from trying to progress it. Some people just don't get back to me. Some people say no. Larger organisations don't have the community spirit that we would appreciate seeing. So it's a little bit difficult, but I'm going to continue, because It may well be, we do have a few shops at the moment that are completely empty. They would be ideal. We've got other shops who are in lockdown, but most of those have their own products in their windows, so they're still advertising, so that's more difficult. But Miriam has offered to help me. I've also spoken to estate agents, and I haven't really progressed that too much either. All is not lost. We shall continue. And I've been in touch with local art groups, and they are keen, as you might imagine they would be, to exhibit. And I do say exhibit. We're not selling because, as David referred to earlier, we don't want to incur unnecessary business rates on owners. So we need to avoid that. So I'm still hoping to exhibit some artworks, and very interested to hear Hayley's thoughts about alternative art. Brilliant. And I'm sure the group will discuss these. And now that we've lost the Art House Cafe, or likely to, for art display, it's necessary that an alternative is put in place. Thank you, Chair. That's it.
Thank you, Sue. Miriam, can I just add something to the Art House project that we look into continuing having art on the walls? Thanks. That's my.
I was gonna, yeah, I was. Well, as soon as I heard Sue say
Yeah,
that,
I thought, why? There's no need for it. No need to lose that.
That would never be the idea of having a community hub. In actual fact, that would actually liven the community hub up with, you know, with artwork and craft work from local people. 100%. Sue, I would hope that would never happen. That the artwork would go. I would be desperately disappointed if that happened.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I don't make assumptions about that, but I thought if we had a community hub, you know, people are going to be coming in with serious questions that are affecting their daily lives. And I thought, you know, how correct is it to have splashy art when people are perhaps in a bit of turmoil and wanting answers? Then, of course, there is the campus. There's going to be, I think, a couple of public rooms. So I'm hoping we might have the opportunity to display there eventually as well. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Right, I saw somebody else waving, I'm sure. Oh, Vanessa, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, let's not forget about our wonderful marketplace that we have. You know, we could definitely be doing something like whether it's a once a month type exhibition in the marketplace for local artists to come along and display their wonderful works. You know, I think that's something that Hayley and I also sort of knocked about as well with one of our ideas too. So there's, you know, that sort of comes into play with the community development aspect, but that is definitely something that we could do and utilize the marketplace for its proper use.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody. That really livened everybody up. That was the most enthusiasm I've seen all evening was on that topic. Right, the next and the last one, I think, on this version of the agenda that I've got is the Clackers Brook proposed restoration sites. I expect you've all seen the little diagrams and pictures. Has anybody got any comments? I mean, this is one just to note, isn't it? John.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is one of the most exciting things I've seen all evening. I'd love to see this restoration work happening. The questions are, obviously, I think if we're being asked to give our opinion on it, which I'm sure we are, then I'd rather we didn't note it. I'd rather in our move that we enthusiastically endorse the proposals to undertake this restoration work. There's some critical questions that need to be asked, which is who and how much, and I think that those are areas that need to be explored, because I think it would be a shame if these really positive suggestions aren't picked up on and explored further. I'd hate to see this, dare I use a very poor pun and say, kicked into the long grass, having come to us. Or wouldn't want to see them sink, or you can insert your pun here. I'm wondering what happens next on this. I would like us as a council to, as I say, enthusiastically endorse the proposals for this work to take place, and for us to try and get an understanding of how we can play a part of it, what funding is going to be required to try and progress this, and what part we could play in trying to help identify and attract that funding.
Adrienne.
Yeah, interesting that John's mentioned funding. I mean, Debbie Bentley did come and talk to this at either the last meeting or the meeting beforehand, and it is something which the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust are putting forward, and therefore I was assuming that we're not being asked to give any funding, John. I'm rather hoping that's the case. And the other thing to note is, of course, none of it is in the Clacka's Brook, it's in the park, where we've obviously got some long-term aim to rewild that area. This is all on Primrose Drive and the Woody and all the way up there. I mean, perhaps David or Miriam could help us out, because I didn't think that we were going to be asked for any funding on this. Absolutely, 100% support it, John. Totally agree with you. It's a really exciting project, actually. But we do need to sort out the funding of it.
Yeah, well, my understanding was that we weren't being asked to fund it, but there is no reason why we shouldn't take part. I mean, school children and young people in general could all perhaps help in some way, and we could make the offer, I suppose. Did I see anybody else's hand up?
Yeah, I think Jane. David. I think Jane Gardner. Did you have your hand up?
Oh, sorry. Oh, Jane. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anybody else got anything to say about this?
Sorry, Chair. Could I just ask then? I'm struggling to understand, why is it on the agenda this evening? If we've spoken to it before, and it's come back to us tonight, what's the purpose of it being here tonight? What are we looking to get out of it being on the agenda? Just because I'd hate for us to miss an opportunity if there was something meant to be happening with it.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, my understanding is, Chair, and the town clerk asked that this was brought to the committee this evening as an update on previous discussions.
Yeah.
I think, like one or two of the members have suggested, I'm not aware that they are looking to us for funding for this. But, you know, there'll be ways, I'm sure, that we can assist them to get the value out of it for local people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there wasn't anything on the paperwork that I've got that said anything about asking us to pay for anything.
No.
No. And my understanding was that it was just an update on whatever was said before, what Debbie said before. Hayley?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that it was Debbie that came to our last meeting to give us the details on it. So I assume this was a follow-up from that to let us know where we were and what was going on, and if there was anything that we felt we needed to respond to, I guess.
Well, perhaps we could ask if there's anything they want from us, ask, if there was any follow-up to it. I mean, I agree with John saying that we should enthusiastically respond in some way with enthusiasm, and I would like to see members of the public or school children involved in anything, in any way that we can help. It just depends on how safe it is for them to do it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would imagine, Chair, looking at this sort of work, it's only proposed restoration site, so I suspect it's not imminent in terms of work on the ground just yet. And to be honest, they would normally do work of this nature in the winter months, I think, rather than during the spring and summer. So whether they'll actually get a start on the ground this winter, I don't know. We could find out.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. That was the last item that I've got. Unless anybody knows any different. David, is there anything else on the agenda that I haven't got on my version?
We have Councillor Jeffrey.
Got Clive waving his hand. What would you like to say, Clive?
I think Jane wanted to speak.
No, we've been through that. You didn't, did you? No, it's all right. She said no, thank you. Thank you, Clive. Okay, so well, that would appear to be the end of the meeting at a record time of 8:15. Well done, everyone. you know, it was quite exhausting actually starting from 6 o'clock. It was still 2.25 hours. So right, okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everybody, and nice to meet members of the public as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you to the public for coming and for sticking it out.
Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, are you still recording?
Yeah, I'll turn it off. I'm just about